Hi everyone, welcome to today's Microsoft Remote Learning webinar called Assessments and Assignments. I'm Matthew Henderson, with me again Cindy Dennison and Trudy Hughes. We are Technology Adoption Specialists with ICT Services in the Department for Education. If you've missed our earlier sessions, we are recording all of this week's webinars for those who can't tune in live or those that want to watch back again at their own pace. They'll be available through the EDIT portal. Just search for Remote Learning Webinars. Please send your questions through in the Q&A section of the live event. We'll answer as many as we can live, and we'll post the answers afterwards with the video of the session in EDIT for all of the questions. We'll also add the slides from all of the sessions as they become available. Now it's over to Troy Waller, Learning Delivery Specialist and Accessibility Lead at Microsoft Education Australia.
All right. G'day everyone. If you've been to one of my earlier webinars, hello again. And if you haven't, well then, g'day for the first time. My name, as I said, is Troy. I am a learning delivery specialist. So my role is to go around the state and also southern states in Australia, turning on people to all the awesomeness that is Microsoft in education. Just looking here, we've got over 100 people logged into the webinar, which is nice. Hope you're going to get something out of this today. I tend to geek out a little bit at Microsoft Forms. I actually think this is the best tool in 365, and it's also perhaps the most underrated tool as well. So, you know, people get very excited about OneNote, people get very excited about Teams, people get very excited about things they can do with PowerPoint, but I really enjoy Forms. And for what it's worth, I really enjoy Forms in all those tools as well. We're in an ecosystem with Microsoft, right? So we're on a platform. So all these tools can actually work together. We've seen how, you know, the whole Office 365 environment can come into Teams. We've seen how OneNote can come into Teams as well. And today what we're going to look at really is how Forms can not only come into Teams, but how it can come into all those other applications that we know and love. So let's jump in and have a bit of a play. Before we do, though, I do want to remind you of this website here, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. That is your go-to page for links, and you know, it's like a landing page, a jump-off page for everything to do with Microsoft Remote Learning. So please jump in there and have a look. So let's have a look at where we're going today. As usual, I'm going to take you into the Microsoft Educator community, talk to you a little bit about that. I'm going to show you how to create an assessment in Forms. We're going to look at how to check results. We're going to play around with the settings and see how we share. But then I'm going to show you Forms in PowerPoint and how you can integrate Forms into PowerPoint, which is really cool. Forms in Stream, which is our video housing application, our video creation application. So putting Forms in the middle of your videos is awesome. We'll look at Forms in OneNote, and then we'll talk about Teams, of course, and lastly with next steps, and we'll see how we go in terms of time for Q&A. But definitely that Q&A button is there on your screen, so be clicking on that and asking your questions, and the guys down at the department will be answering those questions in real time. What I'm not going to do today is I'm not going to stop as we move through the session and take questions. The reason why is I know that people are going to get questions, you know, right at the start, and I've got a feeling I'm going to answer a lot of those as we go along. So we'll see how we go for time in terms of Q&A at the end. So remembering this, education.microsoft.com, education.microsoft.com. This is the Microsoft Educator Center. So I'm going to jump out into that right now. The Microsoft Educator Center is your PD portal, right? So please go back and watch some of our earlier videos, because we'll go through more in depth in those earlier videos about, you know, how to access your courses and your learning paths and viewing your achievements and keeping an account that you can demonstrate your learning to your school leadership, but also to the TRB if you are audited. But down here in Browse Courses, really quickly, I do want to show you a really nice course. If I type in the word assessment here, you'll see that it's going to bring up all the courses that are relevant to assessment. And the one in particular that I want you to have a look at is this one here, Microsoft Forms, Creating Authentic Assessments. It's really about Forms by itself. It's not about forms in Teams and all those other things as well, but it is a brilliant course for you to do to get your head around forms. And what I like about this course is it shows you some of the ways that you could use forms for different kinds of assessments. So please jump in and have a look at that at the end of this session. The other thing to remember is we need to log into office.com to be able to get into not only this app, that is Forms, but all our other apps as well. So our online browser-based apps all live at office.com, and it's really easy to sign in. Signing in just means you just have to use your normal LearnLink email address, which is your ID at schools.sa.edu.au, and use your regular LearnLink password. All right, so pretty straightforward. Let's have a look then at our start page. So when we come in here to the Office 365 start page, we see Forms lives here on our start page. Okay, it may be in a slightly different spot on your start page, but it's going to be there. If you don't see Forms here on your start page, then you can click All Apps over here, or you can click on this little app launcher and it should be in here, or again, you may need to click on All Apps down here, all right? But that's how we find Forms, and it's really easy. We just click on Forms. Now, I want to remind you, Forms does not have a desktop installed app. It is completely web-based, all right? So when we're using Forms, we don't find it down on our machine. We actually find it only through the browser. Okie doke. Let's keep going. It looks like I have closed my assessment thing there. Apologies for that. So I'm going to start that back up again. There we go. So creating an assessment. How do we create an assessment in Forms? Well, what I thought I'd do for you first, before I show you how to create one, is actually give you a bit of a look-see at one that I've created earlier, right? So back to my MasterChef references. I don't know if they actually say that on MasterChef. I've truly never ever watched MasterChef. But anyway, too much information, I'm sure. So when we click on Forms, we can open Forms here, okay? And so this is what it looks like when Forms is open. There is different types of forms that you can create. You can create a form, which is like a survey, okay? So those of you that have used SurveyMonkey or one of these other kind of survey tools, that's just a form that doesn't self-mark, it doesn't record results for in terms of points and things like that. So for us as educators, what we really want to do is we want to create a new quiz. All right, so what I've done is I've created this one here called Office 365 Summative Assessment. Now, the content is irrelevant, all right? So this is one that I use when I do tests for people at face-to-face workshops at the end. I just want to see how well they've retained the information. So I've created this form or this quiz inside Forms for people to do. So for you though, I wanted you to see what it looks like from a teacher's perspective and also what it looks like from a student's perspective. So you can see here, I've got a number of different questions that I have created. Now, if I come into my student space, if I come into my student space, which is up here in preview, oopsie daisy, I'll just jump back into that. So if I come into my preview, I can see what it's going to look like, on a computer, and also what it's going to look like on a mobile device. All right, so you can see here that my first question asks for a date of birth. All right, so the student would actually click on that and they'll be able to add in their date of birth. The next question is a true or false question. So that's just a multiple choice style question that I have built with just two options. One is true and one is false. The other thing that I've got down here is multiple choice with one answer. Okay, so the question there, and then they get to choose one answer. And then this one here is multiple choice, multiple answers, right? Now, it's really important to note that to get that question right, you need to get all the answers. There's no in between with Forms. So you either get all the answers and get it right, or you get miss one of the answers and get it all wrong. So keep that in mind. The other thing we've got is the ability to order. Okay, so here I've asked people to put this in alphabetical order. It could be any order that you're asking, and I just grab that like that. Students can just grab things and be moving it around like that. All right, so that's the ordering question. The other one is a short answer question. So look at this. This is a real thinker's question. This food is very popular in England. What is it? And chips. So obviously I would just type in fish and chips, and then that's my answer, right? Quite straightforward. Now, the reason why that matters is going to become clear a little bit later, but I want you to remember short answer questions. The next one is a long answer question, right? So in 25 words or less, please explain how a teacher might use Office 365 with their most difficult class. And so the student or the teacher, whoever's doing this, can actually put their answers in there. We can embed videos, and we have rating questions, right? So in here, I can put in anything. It doesn't have to be a video. I could put in a graphic. I could ask, put in a sentence, anything, and then I ask the students to actually give me a rating. And I can give a rating out of 5 or a rating out of 10. I can also change those into stars. The other one is the maths question, right? So you can see here I've built a maths question. I'm going to have a little bit of a play at the back end of this with you in a moment, but you can see here we've got a maths question. It's a multiple choice maths question. You may look at that and say, okay, multiple choice for maths, not so great, but when we get into using it inside OneNote, I'm going to blow your mind at how cool this is actually going to be. And then the other one we've got is the ability to upload an answer to a question as a file. So you can see here, please upload your data as a spreadsheet, and then they've got a 10 megabyte file size limit, one file they're allowed to upload, and in this instance I've made it an Excel file. All right, so those are the different kinds of questions that we have. Now I want to show you what that looks like at the back end, which is here. Okay, so what I've got here is, again, when I click on this, you're going to see this is the back end and how I would create it. So I've just put in my question, and then I've chosen the type of question, and then they put in the answer. Now, what I can do as well here is I can set points, right? Because if there is a definitive answer, and this is really key, if there is a definitive answer to the question, it will self-mark and it will assign points, all right, which is really, really cool. So in this instance, because it's a date of birth, I don't want them to have points, but I do want to make sure that I click over here and I want this to be required. In other words, they can't submit the test until the required questions are all completed, which may in fact be all of them. All right, and then over here I've also got an ellipses. So I can do things like throw in a subtitle if I want, and also I can add branching, which we'll come back to a little bit later. Now, I'm going to show you the different types of questions and how we would go about creating those just by adding a new question here. Now look at the choices it gives me. It gives me the ability to have a choice, right? So this is like multiple choice many answers, multiple choice single answers, etc. I've got the ability to have a text response, so that's short answer and long answer. They can give a rating, they can give a date, but I've also got the ability, as we saw before, to upload a file. And when we're looking at the survey questions, then we might want to use things like Likert scales and the Net Promoter Score. That's more about taking a survey than doing a test. So I'll let you explore that for yourself. But when I come down to my multiple choice question down here, you can see that I've put in a multiple choice question. I've given 2 answers, true and false, and then I get to choose if this is which is the correct answer. Okay, and in this case it's true, but I can also set this to give immediate feedback. So if a student checks that answer, I might be able to, I can put feedback in there and say something like great answer, right? Oh, perfect, or something like that if I wanted to. Or if they get it wrong, I could actually put something in here like, excuse me, I could actually put something in there like, please see the textbook page 54 or something like that. I could actually put that in for them as well. All right, so that's that, and that's what that looks like. As I showed you before, multiple choice, single answer, multiple choice, multiple answers. So you can see that when I click on this, it actually, I can select a number of answers, right? Not just the one. And I have to make sure that I switch on the multiple answer option. Here is the ordering again, which we saw before. Now, the thing about the short answer questions is that Forms is able to auto grade if there is a definitive answer. So, for example, multiple choice, true and false, ordering, it's easy. There's one simple answer at the end. But when we're talking about text, well, then that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky. So it gives you the option of putting in your answers, but there might be variations of answers as well. So you can actually put in multiple potential answers for that as well. And if there is a definitive answer and the student gets it, then, or sorry, I should say, if there is a definitive answer, then this Microsoft Forms can actually self-mark that. Now, I don't want to skip over how important that is for us in terms of our time. Instead of the students handing back a piece of paper once upon a time when we were all in school with them, we would get that piece of paper, we'd have to go home and mark them all, etc. Now, what Forms will do is it will mark the majority of your questions for you, which is really exciting. It takes a lot of our time, gives a lot of our time back. But when we come to something like a long answer question or something that's going to be more where there is no definitive answer, Forms will not mark it. But later we get the chance to come back and create our own, and do the marking ourselves. All right, so we've seen some of these questions here. Now, the thing about the maths question I want to share with you, I'm actually going to come down here and I'm going to create another maths question, and I'll delete it at the end because I just want to show you what it looks like when you create a maths question. I'm not a maths teacher, so forgive me if I butcher this. But when I create this question, what I do is I can make sure that that's a maths question there. And then when I might say, as the question itself might just be solve this equation. And then I get to enter an equation. Now, what happens is I get this equation tool come up, and there's all different options that I can use in here in terms of symbols, etc. But I can pop that in. And then I can also set, when I put an equation in, so let's go something like 2x squared, remember I'm not a math teacher, taught grade 1 for a really long time, plus 6 x, and then we go equals, okay, and then we click OK. Now what happens is it will actually solve it for us. Okay, so there is my correct answer and there are my wrong answers, right? So if I just add them all, there we go, that's in there now. Now it will automatically throw in our question, our correct question as our first answer. So just come down here to the bottom and just make sure that you shuffle the options, which is what I've done there. And that way it won't always turn up as the first answer when the students do the test. All right, so I'm going to delete that one, get rid of that one there. So there you go. That's how we create this, right? It's really very simple. We just come in, choose a quiz, and then we go in and we start building around our different question types, right? So for some of you, you may be wanting to use this mostly for short and long answers. You may be wanting to use this mostly for multiple choice or even a combination of all the others. Okay, the other thing I want to share with you as well is that you can add, you can change the theme. All right, so we've got a lot of different theme ideas that are there for you and colors, etc. And you can upload your own graphic as well, just to make it a little bit nice and a little bit fun. As I showed you before, you can, when you create a question, you can, let's make that a multiple choice. You can add graphics, right? So you can search for images. Or you can upload from your computer or go into your own OneDrive, and you can also add videos. So you could put your Microsoft Stream link if you've uploaded videos that you've already built, or you can also just throw in a YouTube link as well. Okay, so that's a pretty cool feature in there too. All right, so that's how we create an assessment. But the next thing we want to do is we want to know how do we check our results. Now I want you to imagine we've already shared this, and I will take you through and show you how to share this in a moment. But first things first, I want to take you and show you how we would check our results, assuming that we've already sent it out and that people have already, our students have already completed it. So what we do is we just really easily click on this button here called responses. So I've sent my form out, everybody's accessed it, they've completed it, it's come back. I click on responses and I get this screen here. Now, the thing I like about this screen is when you're using this with students in real time, this will actually update in real time, okay? So every time a student submits this, this will refresh and I'll get more information. So you can see here, I've got 6 responses to the date of birth, okay? I've got an overview, a snapshot of my entire class, right? So the question was Office 365 Pro Plus can be installed on your laptop. 3 have got it right, 3 have got it wrong. So I know that I've got a long way to go with these kids because I've got only a 50% correct response rate on that question. So this is giving me an overview of the entire quiz as a cohort, not individuals, okay? So it's really good that I can get in there and look at that like that. But of course, when I want to get in and look at my students, individual students, then I come up here and I click on Review Answers. And now you can see, because my students have had to sign in, because this is in the Office 365 environment, I can send it out as anonymous, but if I make it so the students sign in, well, that's even better because I know that it's them that's completed the test. Now look at the sort of information it gives me. It gives me the time it took them to complete it. It shows me the number of points that they've accrued so far, and I can also give them feedback. That could be overall feedback, but I can also give them feedback per individual question, right? So I might say, great work, Stephen. But I'd probably come back to that because the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that everything's been graded correctly. So I can quickly scroll down and go, yes, he's got that one correct. He got this one correct, which is fantastic. He got his point. He got this one correct. Awesome. This one as well. Now this one down here needs my review. All right, so this student, Stephen, when I say, please explain how a teacher might use Office 365 with their most difficult class, he says, I have nothing to say here, I'm just typing. You can tell that was me setting up my demo. That's a great answer, though. I'm going to give him 5 points. All right, and I may want to give him some feedback there as well. But that's already saved, okay, into the data into the back of forms. I can go through. Some of them don't need to be graded because they're rating questions, etc. This one down here, he's got it wrong. So you can see it's not assigned him any points. I could read his assessment data sheet by clicking on that, and I could give him a full 15 points. And now when I come back up to my score up here, you will see that now he's got 25 out of 27 because there's a couple of questions that I needed to mark. Really, really easy. I can go to the next person by clicking on this, or I can click on it here, and here's my next student. And I go in and I can do it that way. Now, that's if I want to mark it student by student, but instead I might want to mark it question by question because really the only question that I really need to mark are the questions are those 2 towards the end. So what I can do is I can come down here to just this question here, and then I can click Review Next. And that will take me to that question again, right? So I can say, okay, that's good. We'll give you 4 out of 5. And then we come down to here. And yes, I've read your assessment data and I'm going to give you another 15. And then I go to the next student. In a sense, it becomes kind of blind marking, right? Because I'm not sure, I can't even see which student I'm actually looking at, which is great in terms of us making sure that our marking is fair. Okay, now remembering, I could actually just look at those questions, all right? So I could come down to question 7, for example, and I can look at all my students and give them marks straight from here. So I don't have to be going student by student. I can just do all the questions that I know I need to mark. So in this case, I'm going to give him 3. In this case, I'm going to give that student 2, and that student's got 5. Fantastic. And that student needs some points as well. Okay, very good. And now I'm going to go to my other thing that I needed to assess. So I'm going to assume, oh, excuse me, wrong one. I'm going to assume that I have viewed all these, and I'm going to give them all scores depending on how well they did. I'm on 775. Okay, so that's all done. Oh, that one there, sorry. So I'm going to give them 7. All right, so there we go. So that entire cohort is marked, and it was marked that quickly because Forms is taking the marking for me as whenever it can, which is awesome. Now what I can do now is I can post scores, and everyone will get a notification letting them know that they have had their scores, that their assessment has been marked and the scores have been posted. But I want to show you something even better than that. When we click here on Open in Excel, now you think about how much time you would spend then taking that data and putting it into a spreadsheet, etc. When I click here on this, what it does for me is it opens up Excel. I'm just going to drag that up so you can see it. It opens up Excel, and all the data from that assessment is saved now into an Excel spreadsheet. And this is going to save far more data than I ever would if I was doing this myself. I'd have to keep the assignments or keep the assessments for them to be able, for me to be able to see this. Instead, Forms collects it all for me. So you can see here, I've got my student IDs if they're collated. I've got the start time and the completion time. So I can look at this and see how long these students actually took to complete this quiz. I can also look at their email address, their name, of course, and their total points, right? So after I've marked this, it's all there. But look what it will record. It will record the feedback I give. It will record what time the grade was posted, and it will also include their answers. And that's true of all the different questions that we have, right? So it not only gives the answer, but it also gives my feedback, etc. So we're collating and saving much more information than we would ever do if we were doing this manually. So this is not just replacing what we do, this is actually accentuating and making what we do that little bit better. And if you're like me, living in a school where everyone's talking about data and you're just thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have time to collect all this data. The amazing thing is when you create an assessment, Forms will mark everything and reduce your marking time. Forms will grab all that data and throw it into an Excel spreadsheet for you and save you all that collation time. And then you can, conditional format or send it off to a vice principal or whatever it is that you need to do. All right, so that's pretty cool, huh? That's some of the cool stuff we can do there in terms of checking our results. Now, the next thing that I want to share with you is looking at our settings and also our sharing. And what we can do here is when we come up here to settings, we have the option here to look at the settings. I can show the results automatically or not, right? So in other words, when they do the quiz at the end, they get the option to actually look at their answers. Now I can turn that on or off because I may not want to be doing the test and then handing out the answers to other kids who haven't done it yet. I can make this an open quiz, meaning anyone with the link can respond, or I can make that only people in my organization can respond, which means that they need to sign in. It'll record their name, and I may lock it down to one response per person, or I may want to leave that unchecked and let them do this test as many times as they want, and it will record each attempt every time they do it. The options for responses are to accept responses. There's a start, that's basically turning it on or off. There's a start date and an end date for the quiz. I can shuffle the questions so they come in random order. I can also customize a thank you message saying, great job. I hope you did well on that quiz. I'll let you know, whatever I want to say there. I can send them an email saying that they have completed the quiz and I have received it. So that can become an automated feature as well. And I can also get a notification every time someone completes the quiz. So that's what that looks like there. Now, in terms of sharing, how do I want to make this available to my students? Well, I've got two choices here, right? So anyone with the link can respond, that is people outside of the organization, or only people inside the organization, which means they have to sign in. I can grab a link by clicking on that. I can also get a QR code that I could publish, whether I'm inside my classroom, or I could grab that as a GIF or a JPEG and send that out so kids can be opening it with their phones or their iPads, etc. I've got an embed code if I want to embed it into something else like Sway, or I can just send them an email with that link as well. All right, so that's how we share that out to the students. Now, the other thing we've got is sharing as a template. So sharing as a template means that I may have this great quiz that I've built and everybody in my year level team thinks that's a great test and would love to use it as well. What I can do is I can copy that link and send that to them, and they will get a copy of this quiz that then is saved into their form space, and it has a life of its own. So if they make changes on that template, that's fine. It won't affect my original. So that's how we share what we've done. But another thing to look at here is sharing to collaborate. So that means that I want to be able to invite people to build on this exact form. So not a template that goes out with a life of its own, but I want to invite other people in to build this with me, right? So I might be working with another teacher and I'll do questions 1 to 6 and you do questions, 7 to 12. And that's how we collaborate there as well. All right, so we can share to collect responses. We can share it as a template, and we can share to collaborate. Now, I know I'm talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I know also that I'm sharing with you a lot of information. Remember, you will get this video, and I'm also going to give you ways that you can go in and find out further about how to do all this great stuff. All right. Now, the one thing that I didn't share with you was the ability to branch. And you forgive me, but I just noticed for some reason the branching option has actually vanished from this tenant. So please go in and explore how to branch. Basically what branching does is you can set that if they get a question right, you can determine which question they go to next, whether that's 2, 3, 4, or if they get it wrong, which question they go to next. So for example, if a student answered this question correct, I might say, fantastic, go to question 3. But if they get the question wrong, I might want to find out more information from them. So what I can do is I can get the form to automatically send them down to, in this case, question 11. And then this question asks them to watch a video and then ask the question again. But interestingly enough, only if you get it wrong does this question appear in your form. If you get it right, then you never see this video because you don't need to waste your time, right? So we can use it in a formative sense as well as a summative sense, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's looking at settings and sharing. Now let's talk about forms in PowerPoint. All right, now forms in PowerPoint is pretty amazing. So what I'm going to have to do for this, guys, I'm going to have to show you behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is I'm going to actually bring up my live PowerPoint that I'm using here. I'm going to bring it up here so you guys can see. So now you get to see behind the magic. All right. So when I want to insert a form into my PowerPoint, what I do is I just come up to the Insert tab. Actually, I'm just going to pop it over here. So here's the instructions here. I click on the Insert tab and then I find my Forms button. All right, and there's Forms. So when I click on that now, what happens is it opens up a Forms dialog box over here. And it asks me, do you want to do a new form or do you want to do an existing form? And I don't know why that's not opening up for us. Let's try it again. It's probably my dodgy internet. That's a real shame. Okay, so basically what happens is you get a dialog box appears here and it asks you, do you want to create a new form or do you want to use an existing form? And the cool thing about that means that it lets me access forms that I've already created. And if I was to click that, then the form will actually appear right here inside my PowerPoint. And then when I share that PowerPoint out and the students view the PowerPoint, that slide will actually appear as the form. It's interactive. They can go inside the form, answer the form, and all that data will be sent to me back through Forms, regardless of who's doing it here. They may have to sign in depending on what machine they're using, etc. But everything that we saw in Forms can happen inside a PowerPoint presentation. So I might send a PowerPoint presentation out with recordings and me talking and all kinds of bits and pieces. And then at the end of that, or partway through at the end of that, there's a little assessment and then that information is sent back to me. It's also a really good way to make sure that the students have actually watched the video and watched the PowerPoint. All right, so that's what it looks like in Forms. I'm sorry that you didn't get to see that, but I'll certainly show you where all those instructions are at as we move on today. All right, now the next one that's really cool is Forms inside OneNote. Now, Forms inside OneNote is exciting. Let's jump into OneNote. So if you have already accessed the first 3 of the webinars, then this is not going to be new to you, but in terms of using OneNote. However, if you haven't, I do suggest you go back and explore that. So I'm just going to assume that you've already seen these videos. But what we can do with our assessment, so I'm here in my class notebook, but I can be anywhere inside Forms, inside OneNote. I'm going to insert, so I click on the Insert tab and I click on Forms. Now what happens is Forms, the Forms dialogs box starts to appear, and this is what we should have seen a moment ago back in PowerPoint, so sorry about that. But I can create a new quiz or I can throw one that I've already created. So I'm going to do that and throw that inside here. And hey presto, there's that assessment, right? So you notice here it's recognizing me because I've signed into this machine. So it's saying, hi, Troy, etc. So there's that assessment, and the students can actually do that. And I can distribute this page through my class notebook. They don't have to be fiddling around with links or QR codes or anything. It's all just sitting there inside OneNote. But I want to show you this one here, one that I've actually prepared earlier. And you can see that the form is in here. Now, remember I told you before about those maths questions, right? And maths questions are really tricky, especially with, we're doing multiple choice. How's a student going to do this? When we place our questions inside OneNote, what happens is, if it's a touch and stylus enabled device, students are actually able to write their equations. So the student can actually take that equation, copy it out next to the OneNote, next to the form, and then they can actually do their working out themselves, all right? But if they get stuck, what happens is the student can actually grab this like that, okay? So he's highlighted his text, right? His handwritten text, or if it's typed, you could, copy and paste it over here, hit on the maths button. And what happens now is you can see that OneNote is actually reading that handwritten equation, okay? And it gives me two options. I can fix it if it got it wrong, okay? So I could just fix it to make sure it's reading it correctly, or I can ink to maths and turn it into print. But down here, look at the actions that I've got. All right, now I was a grade 1 teacher. I'm not quite sure what all this means, but I know that when I set this up, this is actually the solution that I'm looking for. So I click on that. Now what happens is, this is actually going to solve the problem for me according to which one I'm looking for. And in this case, I'm actually looking for that one, I think. Anyway, so it'll find the, actually I'm a bit lost here because anyway, whichever one it is that I'm actually looking for, remember I told you I'm not a maths teacher, but it will find that for me, okay? So it will help me out in finding the answer. Now you're looking at that and saying, oh, that's going to help you find the answer for a quiz. Not necessarily. I can actually switch this off from the teacher's end so that they can't use the maths tool. But what they can do when they're unable to see their teacher is they can show the solution steps. And what happens now is that OneNote actually gives the student step-by-step instructions on how to solve that question. And it can also be read to them through this, all right? Now, where I wanted to show you the cool things with forms is if I was struggling with that kind of question, I can generate, I'm going to click over here, I can generate a practice quiz. Now what happens is Forms kicks in again and creates for me, depending on how many questions I want, I'm just going to go with 3. On the same page, it's going to throw in, and this is my personal page, it's actually going to throw in a brand new series of questions exactly like the one that I was struggling with. Okay, and so I can go in and do those and do my working out over here, etc. And it's going to train me, giving me that practice, and any question that I'm struggling with can go through this whole process again. All right, so that's one of the really cool things that you can do with forms inside of OneNote. All right, cool. Now let's talk about forms inside of Stream, because this is also really exciting, and this is a fairly new tool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into Stream. So Stream lives on our Office 365 start page. If you don't find it here, remember, just click on All Apps or click on your app launcher and find it in here. All right, so down here in All Apps, you can see there's Stream. All right, but here it was for me. So when I click on Stream, Stream takes me into my video content that I've possibly created in Stream, I've created in Teams, or I've created in a lot of different places. Now, what I've got here under my content is I look at my videos, and here is yesterday's webinar, okay, which I have saved into Stream. All right, now what I can do with that though is when I click on this, it's already created for me a transcript, okay? Everything that's gone on in my video, it can be played from in here, which is exciting. But look at this interactivity. When I click on interactivity, I get to add a form, right? Now, I could find a perfect place in my webinar. Okay, so I might, I could actually make it at this point in my webinar, and then I'm going to add a form. Now, what I need to do is I need to come back and I need to grab my share link. Okay, so I just grab it from here inside forms. I clicked on share and copy. Then I come back into this and I click my paste icon into there. Sorry, paste control V, pasting it into there. And the name of this form is going to be my, I'm going to call this my 0365 quick quiz. Okay, and I'm going to add it to the timeline. I've already said where I want it to be, but I could move that. So it's at 29:58 and then I add to timeline. Okay, now what's happened is that video now has a form at 29:58 embedded in the inside. So if I was to play that video, it's going to take it back a little bit further. So that's about a minute. So we don't really have a minute to wait, but I'm just going to speed it along a little bit more. So you can see that that video is playing along. We're going to get to 29:58 in a moment. So that's playing away. I don't know if you can hear that sound coming through, but I can hear it on my end. And then bang, the form kicks in. So this is where the student actually answer questions, which hopefully you have built around that video you're watching. They go in, they answer it. It can all happen inside that same screen. It could be full screen, however they're watching it. And when they have finished, they continue with the video. All right, so that's how we build our forms into our videos inside Stream, which is pretty exciting, you have to admit. Now, let's look at our next little bit of excitingness, and that's forms inside Teams. Now, I told you I get excited about forms, didn't I? So if I'm in my team, and those of you that have already seen the Teams videos and the OneNote videos and all that kind of stuff and those webinars, please go back and have a look through. If you haven't seen them before, please do, because you need to understand Teams to understand what I'm doing. But what I'm about to do here is I'm about to add a form as a tab across the top, right? So I might have an assignment, an assessment or something that I want the students to do, and I want it to happen. I'm going to put this one's going to actually sit inside the literacy channel. I just click on here. I click on forms, and there's that forms dialog box opening again. Is it a new one? I can create a form on the spot, but no, I want to use good old Office 365 summative assessment. And I'm going to put a post to this channel as well. So now, let that load. Now they have a fill option to complete that from inside Teams. So if we come back here into my posts, you can see that that sits up there. The students can access it there, but I've also made an announcement inside the team. So it's a really nice way to draw their attention to that. All right. But at the same time, I want to show you what it looks like as an assignment, all right? Because I can actually, inside Teams, I can set forms as assignments. So if you've seen the webinar already and you've seen all the really cool assignment features that we've got inside Teams, we can bring our forms in. And I did promise this in the last one that I was going to share this and show how we do this. So I'm going to create a quiz. All right, and you can see it opens up another forms dialog box, right? So I can create a new form from here if I want inside my assignment, but in this case, I'm going to just use our old faithful 365 summative assessment. Okay, and now I get to set the points are already set, I should say. It's already set the title. I could change that title if I want. I can set a category. I can decide where I'm going to assign this, if it's going to be to this team or maybe another class that I'm working with. Do I want to assign it to all students or individual students? Set a date, a due time, etc., etc. And then when I'm ready to go, I can assign it, or if I'm not ready to go, I can save it and access it later. And now what happens? You'll see one that again, my MasterChef moment, one that I created earlier. Here is my Office 365 summative assessment waiting for the students. So when the students click on this, they get to access that from right inside Teams. So one more thing before we move on. Remembering, we have seen we've seen forms inside OneNote. Okay, we've seen forms inside Teams. We've seen forms inside Stream. Okay, but I can bring OneNote into Teams. I can bring Stream into Teams. I can bring forms into Teams, or I can bring forms inside OneNote into Teams and forms inside Stream into Teams, and I can make all that accessible inside that that class team and that class notebook that I've got going on there. So again, you can see I'm quite excited about the awesomeness of Teams and everything that we can bring inside of Teams. All right. So before we hit Q&A, and I'm really glad we've got about 15 minutes left for Q&A, I do want to remind you of education.microsoft.com, that course there, creating authentic assessments. Remember, that's going to do really just forms, not forms in OneNote and forms in Teams and all that kind of thing, but it is there for you, all right, to access. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is this one here, support.office.com/forms, support.office.com/forms. And I'm going to take you in and show you that page because this is where you can answer all your questions about how to do things. All right, so there's a get started portion there. There's how to share and collaborate, the formats. But the one I really want to draw your attention to here is integration. And this is going to show you how to put it into Stream, how to put forms into Excel. We didn't even get there, but there's awesome stuff you can do there. Again, putting it into Teams and Sway and all these other things as well. All right. So again, that website was support.office.com/forms. I'll just get rid of that because that's a bit confusing. /forms. But you can also ask your questions directly into this one here as well. So I could say, how do I bring a form into Stream? Excuse me. How do I bring a form into Stream? Okay, and I hit search. All right, add a video to a question, embed a form into a Sway, etc. And I'd scroll down and eventually come to the ones all about bringing it into Microsoft Stream. All right, so that's a really good way for you to find your answers rather than having to search or work it out for yourself. Another one I want to draw your attention to, support.office.com/education. These are our support pages for teachers, specifically about using this stuff in the classroom. And when you scroll down, well, you've got the questions again up there, but when you scroll down, you can see you've got dedicated portions, and here's the one for forms. All right, so this is where you get those questions, right? How to create surveys, quizzes and polls, how to share with your students, etc. How to customize, how to manage them, etc. There's all these different places that you can go in there and find out. So again, coming back to that, there was support.office.com/forms, and over here I just mentioned support.microsoft.com/education. I want to also remind you that we're on Twitter. If you're a Twitter fan, MSAUEDU is our handle, and also please remember aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. If you want our newsletter, that's the newsletter there. Please connect, and if you want to connect with me on social media, that's how you do it. That's that page there, but these slides will be available to you. Okay, I have genuinely talked 40 minutes straight. As you can imagine, I'm very tired, but I'm really keen to hear some of your questions. So I'll throw it over to the guys down in Adelaide.
Thanks, Troy. That was great. We have quite a few questions that we can throw at you. In terms of setting a quiz, can you edit the quiz answers after you've posted the quiz? You
can. But once you do that, then obviously if students have already made set the answers, well, then they're going to have done that in an old version of your quiz, so you might want to actually ask them to do it again. But definitely once you post it, you have full access to that. You can change that at any time. You can make copies, etc.
Great. For definitive answers, is it case sensitive?
No, it's not.
Okay. And what about how do we add pictures to the response selection in a quiz, in a question?
You can't, but you can actually allow them to upload a file. So there's no ability to add a picture to the answers, but the students, if they want to use a picture, you'd have to create that as a file upload question. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Troy.
Is it possible to have multiple quizzes under the same assignment tab covering a topic? For example, in science, a pre and post test.
No, you'd have to have those as individual tabs. So you'd have to have a pre-test tab, a post-test tab, and they would be quizzes in and of their own right.
Thank you. Another question here. Create form for test, could it be timed?
I don't know the answer to that. Let me find out for you. My sneaking suspicion is no, it will record the time that you take, but I don't think you can set a time. But let me find out for sure.
Thanks, Troy. And I've got one more. Can we access libraries of existing forms through the department? That's more likely for us. Could we build this from the forms of teachers within the department?
That's entirely possible, and then they could be actually shared out. One of the links that I've given you there actually allows you to access other people's forms that they have actually made public. So I would say the answer to that is yes. It just needs to be developed and built.
Great, thanks, Troy.
Okay, we've probably got another 2 more. Can you highlight or change the font color for a part of a question?
No, not for part of a question. Sorry.
Yep, okay. And the other one is, if there was a spell check, if you're doing a spelling test, will the browser pick up the correct spelling or not?
That's going to depend on what browser you're using. So if you're using a browser with a spelling feature, it may in fact, for a spelling test, it may in fact identify that you're really going to have to suss that out for yourself. The thing you've got to remember is students going to come in with all different browsers, with all different features and all different add-ins, etc. So I don't know that I would use this for a spelling test.
Mm-hmm. And there's 2 more I want to ask. With regards to those people using an iPad, is it possible to create a form using an iPad, or do you suggest using a laptop or a desktop?
As long as you can use it with anything that has a browser, so you can open forms on the iPad and you can go in and create a form, but it's going to be much easier with the full keyboard than it would with an iPad device.
Yep. And somebody asked, PowerPoint doesn't appear to have an insert forms option. Is this correct?
Yes, good question. PowerPoint does have an insert forms, but your version of PowerPoint is probably quite old. So what I suggest that you do is when you come to your Microsoft Office start page, you actually get an option here to install Office. And please go back and look at our second webinar, which will explain all about Office 365 Pro Plus. But the department has fully paid for you to have 5 copies of this. And when we click on Install Office on the machine that we want to install this on, it will put the latest, greatest version of PowerPoint, Word, Excel, etc. onto your machine for you.
Great, thank you for that. I'm just reading some of the new ones that came in. So somebody said, when using the branching option, do each of the branches need to be equal in the number of questions and points?
No, you can set that any way you want.
Okay, great. And there was another question, where do forms sit? But you covered that earlier by saying going to office.com.
Correct. Yeah, it's an app there on office.com.
I think that's pretty much all the questions that we got on forms today.
Okay, great. I just want to stress that this is a great tool for assessments, formative and summative, but remember, when you're working remotely, you're not going to be able to supervise your students in the way that you may be used to in a classroom. So this is not going to be the answer for every kind of assessment, especially high stakes testing. But for some of your formative stuff, for remote learning, this is a great tool.
Great, thank you, Troy.
Okay, no worries. All right, guys, well, that's it from me. I'll hand back over to you guys to say goodbye. And I'm hoping that we're going to do some more of these webinars next week or the week after. So thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's final Microsoft Remote Learning webinar. There have been over 1,000 connections to these events, which is absolutely fantastic. Once again, a really big thanks to Troy Waller for his presentation. Right from Scott Bayless, the CIO down, we all thank you very much. It's been a great amount of time you've given us this week. Don't forget that we're making all of these webinars and the accompanying slides available through EDIT.
And additionally, ICT Services are currently working with Microsoft to deliver a learner management system via Microsoft Teams for those sites that don't have an LMS. So work is currently being undertaken on instructional videos, support guides and advice to assist school staff taking up this solution. We'll look to provide these over the coming weeks.
And please remember that we're here to support you. So feel free to contact us using EDIT if you need us. And I also want to let you know that we're hoping to deliver personalised online training to you in your school soon. And we'll be in touch with details on how to facilitate this. Thank you and have a good Easter.
Thanks, everyone.